You're watching the recording of Web Seminar 4 from the natureplus series Reduce, Reuse, Recycle, Future of Building Materials. The topic is Circular Economy in Europe, Approaches and Best Practice. Enjoy.
Thank you very much for joining. Again, my name is Tilmann Kramolisch and I'm the manager of natureplus. And yeah, it's the part 4 today today we will talk about circular economy in Europe, approaches and best practices. And in the last webinars, as you all know, we have strongly focused on Germany, and we saw we learned about the potentials of urban mining. We saw inspiring projects of architects. They really already implement a circular economy, and also we discussed the importance of regulations and political targets in order to really implement circular economy and get it done. So today we zoom out of Germany and take a look at other European countries and the European Union. And as we all know, I guess it's really already a topic indeed. Within the European Union, we have the new European Green Deal, and circular economy is already has entered that with a circular economy action plan that you can see there, and also shown here. Quite some interesting and ambitious targets they have put inside there. For example, recycled content requirements. They want to introduce also a digital logbook for buildings, or also they want to initiate a renovation wave. So really good sounding and ambitious targets. And yeah, as we all know, these targets really need some feasible solutions. And so this is why I'm very happy that we meet today and that we have some experts here that can give us some inspiration for implementing solutions, can show us some best practice. So that's what we want to talk about. We want to get an overview about circular economy approaches in Europe and learn from exchanging best practices. And now I may hand over to Katharina again, who is, as always, moderating our discussion.
Yeah, hi everyone. Also from my side, to all of you who weren't there for the last few sessions, my name is Katharina Brenner. I'm a communications consultant for Commha Consulting in Heidelberg, but also a freelance editor and moderator. And as such, I'm the lucky one to be able to lead you through the program here. Very happy to be back. And I'd just like to say a few words about the technical setup today. As you already realized, maybe you can see the other participants today, and we decided that this might be nice. It's the second last session for us, and with our normal setup, you can't see who else is in the session. So today we thought it would be nice for you to have a look at the participant list, kind of see each other, even if it's just on a virtual in a virtual room. Nevertheless, we would ask you not to switch on your webcam. I think we will get a little bit of a problem with the broadcasting here if everybody switched on their webcam. So even if you're able to do that, please don't do it. And then also what's not relevant for you is sharing your screen or recording, but of course we invite you again to use the chat function. This time just make sure you use the drop down and you put all or alle here. I'm sorry for my German interface. We were not able to switch it into English. Zoom is too intelligent. They know we're German, but I think you get the gist. So if you select all here or alle, then you can send messages to everyone present in the session. And then, of course, you can see the participants today, and there you also have the raising hand functionality. So please feel free to raise your hands in the discussion later on to make your contributions. Just click on participants or Teilnehmer first, and then you can raise your hand. All right. So what we're going to do today is we are going to have a keynote by Dr. Klaus Jakob from the Freie Universität Berlin. We will then get a glimpse into different European countries, the Netherlands from Sissy Verspeek, and we have Katherine Adams from Great Britain with us, and then also Dr. Rolf Bushman from Germany. They will each give us a very short presentation on their perspectives from their countries, and then we are going to collect a few best practices after the presentation. So maybe if you have something in mind already, take a note or get ready to raise your hand later on or use the chat function. So we would like to use the session today to really collect as many best practices as possible to inspire each other, to give each other ideas, and maybe also motivate each other. And then, of course, we have time for the discussion and Q&A again. Also, we're happy to announce that our speakers have, again, a little bit more time than we scheduled. So please feel free to stay with us a bit longer, even after the session has ended. We will stay for maybe 20 up to 30 minutes later to answer your questions from the chat after the session has ended officially. Yeah, but now let's start with our first speaker, and I'm very happy to welcome Dr. Klaus Jakob. He's a political scientist at the Environmental Policy Research Center at Freie Universität Berlin. There he's head of the research group Policy Assessment, which works across various fields such as impact assessment, evidence-based policy making, or ecological modernization. Dr. Klaus Jakob is also active within the United Nations Environmental Programme as author and reviewer, and he is nominated by the European Parliament as an alternate member of the Management Board of the European Environment Agency. And today he will give us an overview of innovations in resource policies in the EU. And to be able to do that, I'm going to hand him over the remote control, which should be working now, Dr. Jakob. And yeah, welcome again, and I'll hand over.
Thanks a lot, Katharina, for introducing me. Tilmann, thanks a lot for inviting me, and to both and all of you in charge for setting up this series. Thanks a lot for doing so, for bringing these people here together. You invited me to take a look on other European member states in their approaches to address resource policies. I give it a try. Of course, quite a big of a challenge you gave me. I focus a bit on innovation in resource policies in the EU. When I talk about innovation, I refer to innovation in policy making, not innovation in technologies or innovation, social innovation. But there are many parallels. Policy innovations are developed. There are prototypes out there. There's possibly tested already, but they haven't yet been introduced in a constituency. I focus a little bit in this question on where it has been introduced, or not a little bit on Germany. I guess with Katherine and with Sissy, we even further extend this perspective. So why, after all, we do need resource policy? So it's a little bit slow. I hope I will not jump to over it. Just to summarize the background against which policies are to be developed and what are the challenges policies have to address. We have in the field of resource extraction and resource use a number of externalities which are attributed to extraction, to the processing, to the use of products, and to the disposals. My colleagues from the climate department, they don't like too much when I say, but I keep on saying, climate is the easier thing as compared to what we are addressing here with a long value chain, the very complex value chains. At each step of the value chain, externalities occur, and land is used, water is used, chemicals are used to extract material, or think of some chemical usage in agriculture and so forth. So lots of environmental impact, social impacts across the value chain. Second thing is we have a number of spillover effects of, in particular, environmental innovation. That argument applies for innovation in general, that the individual firm has not an incentive, not a sufficient incentive in investing in research and development, because their innovation, their invention can be copied to lower costs. And this is even worse for environmental innovation, because the benefits from environmental innovation are not with the individual firm, but with the society as a whole. As a result, there is an underinvestment in research and development. And again, the complexity of the value chain, even if a firm does want to be more efficient and does want to use resources with less environmental impacts, then the information are not there for doing so. As a result, efficiency potentials are not utilized. There is an estimation that depending on the study, between 10 up to 40% of materials can be obsolete from a technical and economic point of view, even within the same trajectories of production. We have high environmental and social impacts. We have a high level of resource consumption, and this is globally even increasing. OECD estimates that up until 2060, the resource use will double from currently around 80 gigatons to something like 170 gigatons. That is per capita. We are currently in the amount of 12 tons per year in average. Germany is a little bit higher, but the global average is coming to the German level currently. This is this gives reason to a number of environmental impacts. About 50% of the total greenhouse gas emission are attributed to resource use. About something like a number of 11% of all species are about to extinct because of land use to provide us with resources. We have microplastics in the oceans, a number of problems attributed to the use of resources. And the specific environmental impacts are even increasing further with innovations that are drilling even deeper into the soil, that is extracting of less and less less and less share in the ores. There's still it is still extracted with higher amount of chemicals, with more land use, with more water use for getting out the same amount of resources. So what is this in Germany about? We have an increase in resource productivity between 2000 and 2015. we had an increase in GDP of 31%. We have in the same time an increase in material use of about 4%. And that results in a resource productivity gain of about 26% in this 15 years. So with good willing, you can say material use remains stable, GDP is increasing, and as a result, the resource productivity is improving, but not as a result of an absolute decrease. This is likely to come in the future because we are pulling out of fossil fuels. But the imported resources, that is ores and industrial minerals for industrial use, that is likely to increase with electromobility and so forth, what is used for this. We have in Germany a policy mix that is promoting innovation, mostly by providing subsidies and supporting the development of technology. We call it the supply side innovation policies. We have a number of instruments for information and for persuasion of companies and consumers. We have a number of instruments enabling the information flow throughout the value chain. And we have in the field of waste management, but only on the output side of the resource flows, there we have regulation and market-based instruments, but not on the input side of the economy. So how's the situation in other member states? We took a look in several databases. The EEA in 2016 published a report reviewing all resource policies of member states. IEP focused 2014 on market-based policies, and the OECD with its database on environmental policy instruments we included. In total, we identified in EU member states about 160 policy instruments with relation to what is in Germany addressed as resources. Germany is a bit unique with not addressing water, not addressing energy or soil or whatsoever, what is natural resources and subject of resource policies in other countries. Germany is focusing very much on the material side of resources. So 160 policies. And there we looked what would be new to Germany in this context, what is not introduced in Germany, and that explains also part of our classification. What we did, we found voluntary agreement, we found other instruments providing information, subsidies. Some countries are experimenting with regulatory instruments. I'll go into more detail later on. And what is really surprising for us is that all member states are applying financial duties, taxes, deposit, market-based instruments that impose costs to the firms. With Germany as a strange example, not applying this type of instrument. So
5 minutes.
Yeah, thanks. What is behind there? Okay, we have voluntary agreements. I mentioned it, for example, in France on resource efficiency in trade, pharmaceuticals, hospitals, telecommunication, road construction, UK, in fashion, food packaging, in Latvia on it's a combined instrument of resource taxes and waste management. We have a number of information-based instruments which Germany could learn from. Regulations, for example, take-back obligations. In Germany, we have it for for batteries and some other products, but other countries going beyond this on paper, automobiles, tires in Flanders, for example, furniture, clothing, office equipment in France. And also Bulgaria is applying command and control approaches. We have in France a famous instrument on a law against plant obsolescence. I'd skip over the subsidies and come to the financial duties, where possibly most interesting in all member states are taxes on resource use. We have in about half of the member states taxes on primary construction materials. Most of them, admittedly, not with an ecological ambition, but with Denmark, Sweden, and UK. We have examples of taxes that are intended to bring down the absolute consumption. We looked a bit on the evaluation of this, evaluations of these taxes. We have, for example, in these countries, Sweden, Denmark, UK, but also in Germany, a much higher recovery rate, about 80–85% in these countries than EU average. We have, interestingly, a larger amount of landfilling in Germany still, with 5% than UK. We have the use of construction material as filling material in Germany. To a large share of what is collected goes back to the environment as filling material. That is considerably lower in the UK with this tax in place, and also a much higher share of construction material from recycling. So there's considerable potentials as the example of comparing UK, but also comparing Sweden and Denmark shows. Why is this so? Germany was certainly a pioneer in establishing a resource policy, but it does not apply, it does not utilize the full spectrum of policy instrument. It does not go into economic and market-based instrument, does not impose taxation, taxes, duties, and certainly not regulatory approaches in regulating the input to the economy, regulating resources. Thereby, relevant barriers, the externalities are not addressed. The information flow is not guaranteed throughout the value chain, and relevant potentials for efficiency are not tapped. And this is, to at least our assessment, because the governance of resource policy in Germany is very much consensus oriented. The use of regulatory and market-based instrument hard policies would imply conflict. I conclude here. I have some further reading from our group if you want to go deeper. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jakob. There, I took a second to unmute myself. Thanks a lot. Tilmann, do we have any direct questions in the chat that we need to clarify right now, or can we move on?
So far, there are no questions in the chat, so yes.
Okay, in this case, oops, sorry, there we go. So as announced before, when I showed you the agenda, we'll take a look into a selection of European countries. So I'd like to welcome Sissy Verspeek from the Netherlands. She's a structural engineer and a technical director at Stichting Agrodome, which I hope I'm pronouncing fairly correctly, a network organization for ecological and bio-based building. Next in line, we welcome Katherine Adams from Great Britain. She has over 20 years experience in resource efficiency, and she contributes this experience as a consultant to various organizations as well as the UK government, and is currently finishing a PhD at Loughborough University. Again, a name that I'm hopefully pronouncing fairly correctly. And for a third perspective, we give a warm welcome to Dr. Rolf Bushman from Germany. He is the natureplus Association President and consults the board in strategic matters. And since 2013, he has been working in the area of technical environmental protection for the Bund für Umwelt- und Naturschutz Deutschland. So yeah, these three will take turns now and give us a short overview of their perspectives on the matter. And first and foremost, I'm going to give the remote control to Sissy Verspeek. Should be working now, Mrs. Verspeek. You might want to give it a try.
Yes. See. Yeah. Yes. No, that one works. Okay, well, good afternoon. So my name is Sissy Verspeek. I'm saying it in English, but that's something that goes automatic. I want to talk about on Stichting Agrodome. We are existing since already for a longer time working on bio-based, as in biological building materials, and trying to get them into the building industry. We gather and share the information that we get from our network. We work mostly nationally, but also in Europe. And when we talk about Europe, it's England, Germany, Belgium, France, but sometimes also Hungary, for an example. We are quite active in education and guidance for professionals, for students, and well, we are the representatives of natureplus in the Netherlands, and via Agrodome, the commercial company, we also are involved in making and reviewing LCAs, because we try to get the best opportunities for the bio-based building products in the Netherlands. And a part of that is also doing LCA studies on these kind of products to, well, show the possibilities and the advantages. Sorry, I need to... There it is, yeah. Short, what we're working for in the Netherlands is to be 100% circular in 2050. But we see in the Netherlands there's still quite some questions on what is circular building. There are over 150 definitions on this, and this goes from very global, trying to still do what the people are doing, seeing how we can call it, until very purists who try to look for the absolute best way of being circular in any part of the building industry. Overall, there's still a lot to do, and we start with looking for ways to upscale well, the whole circular thoughts and circular way of building. Ah, now it works perfect. What I want to show is an example of a product, of a project we're working on. This is the circular bio-based construction industry, CI. And what we're trying to do here is looking at several subjects that are with and these are all in this.
Sorry, Mrs. Verspeek, your connection is a bit wobbly there.
Oh.
maybe just repeat these last two sentences or something.
Okay.
Sorry.
I'm also looking at at the time. Now I got something in my throat. Well, these are the participants that we're working with. Sorry, and we're trying to make we're trying to look at several parts that are connected to successful circular building economy. One part is juridical process frameworks, so it's procurement, education, rules and regulations. The other topic is technical, so it's LCA studies, but also living labs, pilot projects, and expositions. And we're testing materials on several topics. And the last one is social and economical framework. So it's about business models and how partnerships work, what kind of partnerships, who needs to be in a team. I think this is this was my last one. I still actually have quite so much to tell. What I want to say here is, if you'd like to know more about this project, or maybe even become an observer partner, then you can contact us. You can find some more information on the link agrodome.nl. I think I need to leave it with this for now. So sorry, it was really quite global, but or general. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And don't worry, we will get back to you in a second when we do a deep dive into the best practice
Yes.
collection. So it's not the last contribution from you we can look forward to today. But for now, I'd like to hand over the remote control to Katherine Adams, which should be working now.
Hello everyone. Thanks for inviting us to speak from the UK, still just part of Europe, I think. So I'll just take this 5 minutes to quickly introduce you to the Alliance for Sustainable Building Products and just a bit on what we're up to in the UK on circular economy. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Just waiting for the slide to change. Yes. So I'm representing the Alliance for Sustainable Building Products. We're a not-for-profit mission-led membership organisation. We have about 70 members across the supply chain, and our mission really is very much focused on sustainable building products and really getting them used as much as possible as we can in the built environment. So we work in 3 different areas largely. So today is much more focused on our resource efficiency work. So we've undertaken a few projects looking at reuse and design for deconstruction and business models for circular economy and buildings. We also do quite a lot on product sustainability, a whole series of webinars on LCA and EPDs, for example. And health and well-being, we have a natural fibre insulation group running there. So in the UK, we've had policy around for quite a while now on waste management in particular. It's starting to move much more into the circular economy arena. So looking at what materials go in and how long they last, rather than focusing on sort of the end of pipe waste management solutions. So all the different UK countries now have policies and strategies related to circular economy, which all include the construction sector as a priority sector, and they're just about to start to be implemented. So an example of one here is DEFRA are looking at a target of 0 avoidable waste in construction by 2050, which very much looks at the principles of the waste hierarchy and applying circular economy. There's also proposals to potentially develop extended producer responsibility schemes for selected construction products. We have very high levels of landfill tax. You can see the rates there. which has obviously helped diverting waste from landfill. But a lot of that waste does tend to be downcycled. Not a huge amount goes back into the same application. And we have an aggregates levy as well, which has encouraged the use of recycled aggregates to an extent, to about 20%, but that could be improved quite considerably. We also have other drivers in the UK. So this is quite a new driver, the Circular Economy Statement. So this is for London, and the Mayor's Office, the Greater London Authority, are requiring developments which are referred to them to have a circular economy statement. So I think this is probably one of the world's first requirements through planning. And within that, you have to do a pre-demolition audit. You have to say what's going to happen to your waste and follow circular economy principles. We obviously also have BREEAM or BREEAM in our country, and that has lots of credits available for waste management, more so now on circular economy. So for example, you can get one if you do a design for deconstruction plan, a pre-demolition audit, and say how you're going to implement material efficiencies. So we're doing okay in the UK. You can always do better, can't you? As I said, our waste is, high levels are recovered, but again, a lot of that is downcycled, and we have decreased the amount of material that we use overall. But our construction and demolition waste is high, and it's going up compared to construction output, so relatively wise. But most of our waste still comes from the construction sector. And the amount of reclaimed material, so that's how much is being reused rather than recycled, thanks, has actually decreased over time, because I think the emphasis has been more on recycling than reuse. So policies now, they're trying now to look at that in terms of how to sort of shift that balance a bit more towards reuse. And then last slide, nearly. So I've been working for quite a long time in resource efficiency, so I just thought I'd share some lessons learned. Obviously, industry participation is crucial in developing solutions that actually work. Drivers for change are necessary. I think it's easier to make complicated solutions rather than simple ones. And we need to adapt the catwalk, the very big exemplars we do for the high street. So the ones where projects are under everyday constraints from a cost point of view, for example. It's important to have data. We've done a lot of work in the UK trying to get good data so we know where the issues are and how we can target them, and then also getting the basics right in terms of designing out waste in the first instance. So lots more to be said. So hopefully I can share a bit more about what the UK is doing in the discussion section. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Adams. And there we go to our third one of our short speakers, Dr. Ross Buschmann. You should be able to click through your slides now, and I'm happy to hand over.
Thank you so much. So I'm very happy to be here, and I'm very happy to have had three perfect speakers in front of me, and even two out of our natureplus network, which shows that we are a European organization, and this is a very important point of view. But now to Germany and Germans also. Now it doesn't want to go forward. Okay, so to Germany, and how is German legislation addressing building and construction waste and circular economy? So just a few examples out of the German legislation, which is the Waste Framework Law, which is adopting the European legislation on that. It's called Kreislaufwirtschaftsgesetz, which translates to circular economy, but is more a waste law than a real circular economy law. This is current and a current amendment in discussion, but it has no special requirements for building and demolition waste up to now. It will enable opportunities for optional legislation on an extended producer responsibility, so there might be possibilities to address specific legislation, even on waste and in construction and demolition. We are, of course, you know, Germany is quite good in circular economy, considering packaging, but we might be not yet in building and construction. Another point to mention is the resource efficiency program, which passed the German federal cabinet in June. And these addresses at least some measures in building and construction, which promotes, for example, the selective dismantling of buildings to generate secondary raw materials, or even to integrate criteria of resource efficiency in federal funding of construction, maintenance, or demolition of buildings. This is a chance, but these measures have to be implemented. They are just proposed to be done in future. Another important thing, which is still on discussion, is the regulation for alternative construction materials. It's called Ersatzbaustoffverordnung. This is part of an overlapping legislation which covers land filling, soil protection, water management, and so on. This is now up to 10 years in discussion and still not finished yet. And it's important because it will regulate the use of mineral building and demolition waste as building alternative construction materials. So there's a lot to do, and we're still on the point of getting forward to, oh, sorry. Okay, so looking at Germany, you see half of the overall waste produced in Germany is 220 million tons, is due to demolition and construction waste. This is a lot, and looking at all those, you will have the question of what is done with that. Is it recycling building materials? So they are called recycling building materials, but in fact, we are downcycling most of it. So the primary demands of the waste regulation say it should be reused and recycled, but the quality of reuse and recycle, we are not yet at what should be addressed in future. That this is important shows, for example, a natureplus project, which was done with EFOI Research Institute together, which looks at the holistic view on insulation materials. And as we know, at the moment, the importance of building materials changes more and more to the look out on the production of materials. So looking at this, you will see that the result is insulation materials from renewable raw materials have a good and maybe best environmental balance, but even others do have. But the more important comes to the end of life. So new products of EPS are better because they don't have problematic substances inside, and mineral and other products would benefit from a better material recycling. So this is the main importance. So looking at one of these products we do have a problem with is gypsum. In Germany, due to the end of the coal-fired power stations in 2038, we will have a lack of future material, which comes at the moment mostly from flue gas cleaning. So there should be more recycling. Up to now, it's just 4.7% or 4.9%, which is recycled. So there is a lack, and not to get into mining for gypsum, this would be a new field of action which is needed. So in the need for action on national and European level, I would emphasize the following things. Circular economy is and should be an elementary compound of building design. We have to consider reuse possibilities over the whole life cycle. By design of building material and components, we have to look at the life cycle assessment. We have to look at existing buildings and find opportunities for reuse and recycling before deconstructing them. And of course, we have to encourage reuse of building materials and components, and to enforce high high quality recycling and reintegration of recycled materials into new products. So what we need is a framework which enforces recyclability of building products and materials and the use of renewable, resource and climate friendly raw materials. That is something which we have to push for on national, in Germany level, and of course on the European level. And hopefully, as we know, the European Commission addresses with the Circular Economy Action Plan, even this topic, building and demolition waste. So hopefully we get some new impulses from there as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. All right. So thank you everyone for the overview. Now what I would like to do is, yeah, as I said before, we would like to collect some best practices. And in order to do that, I will open a whiteboard. Just 1 second. There we go. So now what you should see is a whiteboard with some preparation. So what we were having in mind is to look for best practices in the area of reduce, reuse, and recycle, which matches the motto and the title of this web seminar series. In the ideal case, you could kind of put your contributions into a little like profile, so we keep it short and therefore be able to collect as many best practices as possible. So we think what would be interesting is, of course, where did this best practice happen, what was the challenge, and what was the solution. And just to inspire you, we put down some categories, like you could think into the direction of products and materials, of planning, laws and regulations, and much more, of course. This is just to give you a little bit of a hint and help you collect some ideas. But yeah, so I will ask everyone in a second to contribute. So you can raise your hand, or of course you can fill out this profile and put it in the chat, and then I can just copy it over later on. But to start this little brainstorming, I would like to hand over to the speakers again. And yeah, Mrs. Verspeek, you unmuted yourself already. Perfect. So if you don't mind, would you like to contribute our first example?
Yes, of course. I would like to say emerges. Maybe I put it in the chat as well so that you can write the name right.
Yes, that would be perfect.
Emerges is a project, a building in Zeeland, the province Zeeland in the south of the Netherlands, southwest. And what's special about this is that it's a care center for special care. And they really tried, they made from an old building, they used as much products as they could for a new building. So it was very much about reuse and recycle. Reuse as in one-on-one, using the same products, or to use it for different parts of the building.
Okay, can you give an example of which materials they were able to reuse?
The cladding, the wood cladding, wooden, how do you call them? Yeah, wood claddings of the facade, the wooden frame, the frame construction. They looked at some other things, but I have to check which other parts before I say things that are not correct. But at the same time, they also try to look at the new products that they need to use to see if they could find as circular as possible. So even though they had to use new products, they still try to do it in the right way of their big ambitions of making it as circular as possible.
Mm-hmm. All right. All right. Would that be okay to put it down like this? I hope you can see that. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mrs. Adams, would you like to tell us about the next best practice? And also, yeah, let me know where I should kind of put it at first. Like, is it more like from the reduce, reuse, or recycle direction? So just like, so I start typing in the right place.
Yeah, so I've got one it's recycle and a little bit of reduce. So put it in recycle. So in England, we had industries that committed to doing resource efficiency action plans. So they're voluntary agreements which the manufacturers lead, working with the supply chain, and they commit to actions across their product's life cycle. So ones that are running at the moment include one for plasterboard and one for bricks, blocks and concrete. And so
sorry, would you repeat that?
So there's one for plasterboard or gypsum, and one for bricks, blocks and concrete. And what they do is the manufacturers agree to targets for recycled content and for collecting waste at end of life. So for example, the plasterboard manufacturers take back 50% of construction waste, and they also have a target for 10% recycled content in their boards. So, did you get all that?
I'm trying. I think I didn't get the one with the 50%, sorry.
Yeah, and they've got a target to collect 50% of plasterboard from construction waste. So these voluntary agreements have worked quite well actually within the UK. They're very much led by the manufacturers, but they then try and get the whole supply chain to commit to different actions. So for instance, contractors for on-site issues and demolition at end of life.
Okay. All right, you let me know if I should put down anything a bit differently. It's just, yeah.
That's fine.
While I'm noting down live. All right, thank you. Dr. Buschmann.
Yes. So I'm always a bit envious on Netherlands and Belgium, for example, because they have a highly good culture of reusing things. There were good examples in Netherlands on reusing even metals from other industries for building, and very, very interesting things. And Flanders, for example, in Belgium is one of the reuse pioneers at all. So what is in Germany? I had the luck in one of the talks before and another to find out that more on the German problem they build even in cellars still. And to have them insulated, you need sometimes insulation material as foam glass. And what I found quite interesting is the recycling opportunities of foam glass, which can be used as not as a whole. They can be used as a whole. They can be used as, if they're teared down to smaller bits and pieces, as ground insulation and below the fundament. These are quite interesting opportunities I haven't seen before yet. And so I think this is one thing, even with a really problematic and highly energy intensive material as foam glass, to give a cascading cascading circular use after the first life. And in the end, you even have the possibility to remelt it and to start from the beginning. So it's a problematic building material, maybe from the first year, because it needs much energy. But if you get a cascading use of the material, even after several years, you will have a perfect idea of reusing and recycling.
All right. So I'm going to put it somewhere in between reusing and recycling, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I'll have a look at the chat. Tilmann, maybe you can give me a hand here so I don't overlook anything or anyone.
Yes, so it's the attendees, you all guys are very active in the chat, which is quite nice. So they're coming in some questions and also a lot of links with interesting projects. Maybe what I would suggest is that any one of you really has a close look into the chat. And later on, again, I would say we would like to provide you with this whiteboard and also with the links here. And maybe now it's an invitation to the people that have posted something into the chat, that maybe Katharina, if you agree, that you personally just present very quickly the project you were talking about. I think this is quite interesting, and also you could put on your video so that we can see you. And yeah, so this is an invitation to really present the project.
Yeah. So feel free to raise your hand. A very convenient thing for me is to follow the lead of Uli Wischnath. Thank you very much. He put in, he used the little profile I suggested in the chat, and I just copied it over, and I'm just gonna maybe read through it with you guys, and maybe other people will have some contributions as well. So what we have here is we are in the area of reducing in the land near Aachen. The challenge was a resource and energy use reduction as well as climate impact reduction for all plots sold in a certain area of building new houses, and the solution was allow only half the impact compared to a reference building built in a traditional manner. So I think this is from the area of maybe regulations, a nice example, and there's a link as well. So if any of you are interested, the link is also in the chat. Thank you, Mr. Wischnath, for that.
Yes, very active is Andrea Heil. And she really puts a lot of examples, and also she has put one link with overview over cradle pilot projects. Also, if you like, you can also look at this project, for example.
And I think there is a longer contribution from okay, that username is probably not the real name, but the username is Elif Stanbologlu, and I'm just gonna copy it over in between reduce and reuse. So thank you very much for telling me where to put it right away. That makes my job so much easier. So there's an example of systemized timber concrete composite building system. Idea is to be as much as resource efficient as possible and take advantages of both materials. The goal is to deconstruct the system and reuse the prefab elements without downcycling. And again, there is a link. Thank you so much for this example. But if I see that right, nobody is raising their hands. So maybe again, the question towards the speakers, do you have any other examples that you would like to share? If not, it's not a problem. I think we have quite a few examples now already, so we can close that collection already.
If I still may jump in,
yes,
Klaus,
please.
Here. I'd highlight Aggregate Levy in UK, also rather old. I learned 2002 already, introduced by Katherine. It provides incentives to recycle very effectively. the rates are higher than in Germany. It provides an incentives to look for good solutions and triggers search processes among the engineers and those industries dealing with construction material. So aggregate levy for recycling.
Mm-hmm. Would you be able to put that into the chat? I don't want to misspell that. Do that.
Gilt that try?
Sorry? There you go. Thank you so much. That's very
And
good.
again, the invitation, really, if you want to contribute something directly.
Yes. Don't be shy. Talk to us.
Sometimes easier this way. Okay, and I see that, yes, Rolf Bushman is giving the example and raising the hand. So, Katharina, shall we?
Yes, of course, of course. There you go.
Okay. Just because you asked for it,
Yeah.
I have to do that. No, I just wanted to pick something out of the chat I saw. There was a discussion on whether PVC windows are allowed to be recycled if they have problematic input materials inside, like lead. Of course, this is a problem, and this is a problem we have to face in future very, very keen. So designing of products has to be without any problematic substances. In that case, we would dilute the lead over all the other products. So we might have to find ways for certain products. We might think of polystyrol foams, which are containing flame retardants. We have to find ways to deal with them in a new way. So, and this is one of the seldom opportunities where I would say some kind of chemical recycling would be an idea. But first of all, and that's something which is most important, is we need to have opportunities of materials to be reused as often as possible. And that needs to have substances out which are problematic, not into put it into the products at all. So PVC windows are maybe not the opportunity I would prefer in future at all.
Thank you. All right. Thank you. Okay, we have one raised hand. Okay. So Vishnu, you should be able
to
talk. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I
Hello.
would have a question for Sissy Verspeek concerning the regulations in the Netherlands. So you have this Milieu Prestatige Bouwen regulation, which actually forces everyone to do a life cycle assessment of the building, and that is somehow converted to environmental damage costs. How does that actually contribute to pushing for circular economy? Do you see a significant impact of this regulation?
Good question. Well, first of all, you're not obligated to have a LCA of the product. But you are obligated to have the environmental impact of the building calculated when you do when you want a building permit. So that's the first thing that is kind of non-cooperative, that does not work together. Also, the government doesn't stimulate the making of the analysis, the LCA analysis of products. So that's another complication in this topic. Then you asked about the cost, the shadow cost of the products, but I wasn't sure. I'm not sure what your question was again. Is it possible to?
You're
give them the
still
mic?
muted, Mr.
Yes.
Yeah, so no, my question was, does it actually bring a push, or does it help like circular materials to be used more widely, that the people actually have to calculate their environmental impact costs, so that this actually, I think it should somehow help to bring recycled materials forward.
It gives an insight on products, as in if well, the costs, the environmental costs, give an insight on the products, as in which have a better score than another, and often bio-based building materials score more positive. So this helps to give people the idea that when you build with the right materials, it will help. It will help in the better chance of getting your building permit, because you get a better environmental cost of the whole building. And it will also, so what I'm trying to say is, yes, it will stimulate, but it's not optimal yet. There's still quite some steps that we need to take when it comes to LCAs, and also in rules and regulations. It's from the one part we obligate companies to do things in a certain way, and at the same time we don't stimulate the needs. So yeah, I hope that's an answer.
Thank you. All right, I think this leads us to the Q&A already. We were gonna give you the chance to put down little stars for your favorite best practice, but I think there's a lot of questions in the chat to be answered, so we will skip the this little interactive part, and I think you'll all agree that you'd much rather hear some answers to your questions. But time is running out. It's merciless, I think, but it's great that in every session everyone is so interested and posts so many questions and comments. So thank you again for participating that actively. Once again, everyone. So there's only 1 minute of our official time left, so maybe we will do our little wrap-up thing and then do the Q&A quite quickly, Tilmann. But I think most of you we will see again next week for the last session, the last web seminar. But Tilmann, if you want to say something before we head into the Q&A, feel free.
Yes, well, first of all, thank you very much to the speakers and all to the people that attended. And yeah, please stay if you can, if you have a little bit of time. We still have some questions in the chat. I would be very keen to post them to the speakers. And yeah, another invitation I would like to give you. So if you would like to if you go for a project in a different country, if you want to have some special information about a different country, so please feel free to, of course, contact us, but also like our partners in the different European countries. They are very happy to help, and as you could see today, they're really experts in their fields. And yeah, this as invitation, and of course, what I don't want to miss to say that big thank you to Westwood Snyder, Isocell, and Multipore for the support for this webinar series. And yeah, last invitation also to join next time, next webinar, last webinar next week, what is in German again. And yeah, the last word I always give to Katharina, and yeah, I hope we can discuss a little bit more.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, we were looking forward to our very last web session on resources and products, product development, which is in German again. So I hope we can see you again next week. But now let's turn to your questions. I will stop my desktop presentation so you can see the speakers. By the way, if that's too many little images for you, you can actually change the view up on top, like in the corner. And then, of course, please raise your hand. You can also switch on your camera then when you talk to us. Yeah, pose your questions, please. But there's also a lot of questions in the chat, right?
Yes, exactly. So I think we just start with the first question that came in the chat, and it's from Ms. Smuda from the German Federal Ministry of for the Environment, and much more names. And the question goes to Sissy and Katherine. Are there any links between energy efficiency and resource efficiency policies? And are they supporting each other, or do you see any conflicts in between them? And yeah, whoever wants to start first, they're invited.
Well, both of you are muted, but Katherine, yeah, there you go.
Hi, yeah. So I think, well, in the UK, and I suspect across Europe, I think energy efficiency policy has been very much done not in a relationship with resource efficiency policy, especially in construction. So there really isn't a link between the two. I think finally they're starting to think that there could be a link, especially in terms of sort of the information requirements that are needed for circular economy, and can some of that be obtained through some of the activities that you do on energy efficiency. And yes, I guess the main issue when you come to energy efficiency is the renovation waste and the materials that you use for the renovation, and that really isn't thought about in terms of energy efficiency. I think it's starting to be thought about in terms of resource efficiency, but in a not a great detail. Don't know. Does that help?
In the Netherlands, there's also not a good link between energy efficiency and resource efficiency. I was wondering whether this question is specific about more sustainable energy or more energy efficient houses, because there are, well, two different things that have two different kind of problems, I think. When you look at sustainable energy, we have quite a thing about resources at the moment. When it comes to, for an example, biomass, in the Netherlands, we tend to use good wood to burn, well, to get enough energy, heat from well, burnable products. So it's not always it's not always materials that are at the end of the life cycle. Sometimes it's good wood that you could use for other things. So this is a big problem because we're now also looking on trying to reduce the use of biomass in energy, which could be a problem for sustainable energy. But when it comes to energy efficient houses, there's really not a connection between materials and the energy use. So no, there's still a lot to win.
Sorry, it's Katherine again. Could I just add as well? I think in the UK there's signs now that we're starting to look at sort of whole life carbon assessments when it comes to building. So the London circular economy statement that were required for planning is asking that, as and the Welsh Assembly are starting to look at whole life carbon. So there is some sort of that's in relation to housing. So they are starting to look at embodied energy in relation to operational energy, and then obviously circular, there's benefits from taking a circular economy approach to embodied energy. So it is starting, but in very, very, very small steps.
It's the same in the Netherlands, just to add. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, there's a question concerning education of architects and planners. Maybe this might be an interesting next one. So the question is, do you know about the situation of implementing circular economy in the curriculums of universities and training of construction workers? Question comes from an architecture student in Vienna, and from their point of view, the topic of reuse and circular economy is a very small niche in the education system in Austria, at least. So maybe can we get some perspectives on that? Dr. Jakob, you should be first-hand experience when it comes to universities.
Yes. No, okay. Sorry.
So
I wasn't good, so.
I'm in your hands and unmuting the microphone. Thanks for doing so. I must say I don't have an oversight of German universities' activities, but perhaps putting forward the ball to Sissy, I do know of a very good training program in the Netherlands for pushing this qualification, and this is possibly something Germany could benefit from. As Germany is training and education is in federal responsibility, and this is possibly also something where the federal states can learn from each other and put a process in motion. In any case, I would sign up to the importance of this topic. In the long run, we need educated and qualified people to put this into practice.
I have to, sorry, if I can add then, Klaus, I was wondering what education you mean in the Netherlands, which one?
It's a training program as part of the Netherlands Circulaire, where you have this information programs, the campaignings, and the training programs for resource efficiency.
If I may, maybe you can put it also into the chat, so anyone who's interested can copy it. And sorry, Sissy, if I interrupt a little bit,
no
because the students from Vienna, and we have a very, very good partner organization in Vienna, and one representative is also here today, Barbara Bauer of the IBO, and they really have a lot of knowledge in this field. So if you want to get some more information about that, well, not really in the university, but around education and so on, so please contact Barbara Bauer of the IBO. Okay, Sissy, sorry, stage is yours again.
Yeah, no problem. Yes, there are some trainings in the Netherlands for circular economy, circular building for professionals. At the same time, I do, even in the Netherlands, I do still think that this is a very important point of attention. We see quite often that building professionals, constructors, architects, etc., still searching for a lot of knowledge. There's still a lot they do not know or do not realize. We're working on it in several ways. Also, for an example, in the project that we're working on, the CBCI that I mentioned before, an important part of this is the education for students. so that they get the knowledge in a very early stage, and also for professionals and all types of building professionals or professionals, for an example, municipalities, governments, and so on. So I fully agree with Klaus that this is something we need to work on together.
Yeah, I would like to draw your attention, everyone, to the chat again. So some of you are sharing universities in Germany where there's chairs for circular economy related topics. So luckily, there's at least a few universities who that put the topic in their program on a bit of a larger scale. So if you're interested, or if you want to do an exchange to Germany from Vienna, have a look at that.
Could I just add something from a UK perspective? So REBA, the professional, so it's the professional organisation for architects in the UK. They've recently committed to quite a lot of sustainability outcomes for carbon and circular economy, and then within their commitments, they are making sure that everyone who does their courses, including their degree courses, because they have to be affiliated to REBA, will have to undertake training in those areas. So it is starting to happen in the UK from sort of professional institution basis, and then there's quite a lot also happening from much more of a bottom-up approach. So lots of architects have got together in London, for instance, under this umbrella called Leti. I'll put it in the chat box in a minute, LETI. And they've been doing lots of guidance and training for each other on carbon, embodied energy, and I think that will go into circular economy as well. So there's quite a lot of sort of different initiatives starting to happen. I think the architects are finally listening.
That's good.
Some have always been.
All right. Also, yeah, sorry, just one quick comment. I saw that some more of you have contributed best practices in the chat. So don't worry, I'll get them out of there after the session is closed and put them on the whiteboard as well. And you will be provided the whiteboard in the documentation afterwards. So thank you for everyone who contributed best practices. And also, of course, you can still post them in the chat. I will copy them out afterwards. Okay, sorry about that. Tilmann, do we have more questions?
Yeah, just also another hint into the chat. So there's a big discussion also going on PVC windows. So I won't recall it here now, but say it again here. But yeah, you can follow this discussion in the chat. And we have two more questions. I hope we can do them, Katharina. So one would be from Christopher. I think he's from London here, and his question is about COVID-19. So his question: any thoughts on the effect of C-19 on the dynamics of systematic change, whether via the general public as consumers or industry and government moving in step? So yeah, he's asking for the effect of COVID-19 on the dynamic of changing something. So whoever would like to say something out of the country perspective, I think that's quite interesting in this case from UK or from the Netherlands especially, I guess. Sorry, yeah. Okay, you all can speak again, I think.
But just maybe I'll just make a short comment on that, because of course there must be changes regarding what we saw with COVID-19 all over Europe and all over the world in behavior, in dealing with our resource use and so on. So there have to be changes in our kind of how we deal with our living, So we have a new approach on home office and digitalization which is pushing forward. And this will probably even change infrastructure needs, which are highly linked to buildings and infrastructure building, like streets and whatever. So maybe there will be a change in future, but now I solemnly find out that single-use plastics, for example, have been increasing and waste has been increasing during these 4 months of COVID. This is another thing which we have to think about.
Thank you.
Mr. Jakob, you seem to.
If I may, yes. I mean, the new social practices is one thing. The other thing is also that in Europe, in the European Union, and also in member states, the recovery programs, the stimulus programs, at least to some parts, are going into an environmental oriented investments. And in Europe, the Circular Economy Action Plan is put quite central into the program of the recovery spending, which is promising. But someone has to look also at the other elements of the programs, which can be potentially very resource intensive. What is happening there? Even if there is a green label on it, it has to be carefully looked upon what resource implications are into, for example, promoting battery electric vehicles and so forth. So looking at this in a very integrated manner is recommendable.
Thank you.
Could I just add quick? I think it's also quite interesting looking at the effects of COVID-19 will be in terms of buildings and the future of buildings. So an example of that is the amount of office space that will be needed, and I haven't got an answer to this. I don't think anyone quite knows yet, but whether, because especially in the UK, a lot of us have been home working. We're all, some of us are quite enjoying it, some of us aren't so much. So whether we will need the same amount of office space or different types of spaces as well, and what that means from a circular economy perspective, and the amount of resources you need is quite a sort of an interesting sort of debate and discussion to be had there.
Thank you.
I recognize this in the Netherlands as well. What I also think is a very interesting thing to look at if and how it will change is ventilation systems. In the Netherlands, we have quite some problems with ventilation systems and C19, the COVID, in senior houses, as in for the older people. They have the, I don't know how you call them in English.
Care homes.
Yeah, care homes for older people, exactly. And there are quite some problems of outbreaks in one building, which has all to do with the ventilation systems. So I'm very curious if this will help benefit the good inner climate and ventilation systems. But at the same time, in the Netherlands, we don't really see a change yet for the building industry. There are some other topics, like, for an example, the CO2 reduction and nitrogen oxide is quite a big topic in the Netherlands. And at the moment, we blame it all on the farmers and not so much on the building industry, even though the building industry is a very important part of where the whole impact comes from. So the building industry is in the Netherlands often an industry which is very well cared for to try to keep it as functional as possible. So especially now with the whole COVID and the whole problems for the economy, I think the first thing that they try to do is save the economy before changing anything in the benefits of the users of buildings and so on.
Thank you. If I see correctly, Tilmann, I see one more question that addresses all the speakers, and maybe we should do that first, because I'm aware that Sissy and Klaus wanted to call it a day soon. But Uli Vishnat says, believes that we should rather go for the reduce aspect if we want to head for a big change. And he says living area efficiency would be something very valuable to go for. So how about, that's what he asks, defining a national living area target? What do you think, dear speakers? Mr. Bushman, I see you raise your hands, but maybe Dr. Jakob, what's your perspective on that? So we can release you into your well-earned evening.
No problem. I'm not sure if I fully get it. You mean per capita limit of the area you are allowed to live in, like 50 or 35 square meter per capita?
Yes, something like that. So let's say, yeah, whatsoever. For the beginning, I would just start with 40, since we are at 46 at the moment. Not so I don't want to make it like a law. Nobody is allowed to have more than that. But the idea would be to actually, as we have a target for Flächenverbrauch, for land use area, which should be declining, that you define such a target and then implement measures that actually help achieving this, like helping people living in very large flats to move to smaller flats, helping people with like splitting large flats. I think there is a lot of opportunities or possibilities, but I think nothing of that is in the mind at the moment. So, and I think such a target would actually help to bring it into the mind of people, of politicians. That was the idea.
Thanks for clarification. I do agree with you that simply looking at efficiency goals, making more value out of less material would not suffice, but instead a reduction is required to become sustainable. That is also a reduction is required to achieve the Paris goals for climate protection and so forth. I'm not sure if this is from top down possible, but instead implies a cultural change that can be, however, supported. And certainly there are many possibilities, and you mentioned it already, to enable people to move between different flats that suits their living condition better than the current one. In any case, I would sign up in defining efficiency not very narrowly in cost efficiency, but broadly in service efficiency. Thinking about what services are needed to provide, to fulfill needs of people, and focusing on needs is necessary.
Thank you. Thank you very much. How about in Great Britain, Ms. Adams? What do you think about like a target like this?
Yeah,
Would that be a possibility at all?
Well, it's quite interesting in Great Britain, because I think the area that we live in, especially in housing, and so the floor area has been reducing quite substantially over sort of the last 20, 30 years. So people do have less living space. I don't know whether, but I'm not sure and I don't know, there may have been work done on this in terms of what the implications are in terms of that and persons' health and well-being. I do think it's important to be able to design buildings that grow with you and adapt with you. So sort of a living type building standard, long life building standard. And I guess that's where the whole idea of sort of the modular buildings comes in a bit more. So you can take, you know, take away, add on. I make that sound very easy when it's when technically it's probably not. So
Yeah. Mrs. Verspeek, would you like to add something, maybe briefly, because we have 1 or 2 more questions, and I think time is running a bit late now.
Yes. I think there are 2 parts of this question. First of all, I fully agree that I think it would be nice to not, it's all about presenting yourself. Having the big house means you made it and you're a star. At the same time, so I think it would be nice, especially in a circular economy and the way we abuse our planet, it would be good to have to build what you need. At the same time, I have to admit that I wouldn't want to live in a small flat and all that I have is a small balcony to go outside. I'm very fond on the green that I have around my boat, I have to say, because I live in a boat. So I think there's also a balance here that from the one side, yes, we should realize that we don't need as much huge houses. That's why all the tiny houses are very popular at the moment. On the other hand, I think everybody has the right to have some green near or around their house.
Yeah. Yeah, there is a nice contribution in the chat, which matches the thought of having some green around your house. So maybe thinking about improving the infrastructure at the countryside to make it more attractive and also more possible for people to leave the urban areas and go where there is more space still left. So thank you, Andrea Heil, for this contribution. If any of you would like to read that too. And sorry, Dr. Buschmann, you'd raised your hand right at the beginning of this discussion about the living efficiency target, and of course, please make your contribution too.
As I'm working, my main working space is NGO, environmental NGO, which is addicted to sufficiency. We already discussed that as well. And if you look at Switzerland, you will recognize that there is a permanent discussion on reducing living space for individuals in urban cities. So there are even people asking for 20 square meters per head per capita. Yeah, that is something which is fluently working there. We mainly discussed the point from the redistribution of living space. So during different space parts of our life, we do have different necessities on living space. So getting a better distribution over the lifetime you have, when I'm 65 and I'm alone, I don't need 100 square meters anymore. But if I have a wife and 3 children, this might be quite necessary. So we might find ways to redistribute living areas during our lifetimes, to find new ways to even get the widow or the widower to share their space with families and something like this. And we have to find new ways to address spaces outside the urban cities, again, by finding new ways of mobility and connecting the area outside of the cities again with the urban areas. That is something which we work on. But of course, I think 30 square meters per head for a lifetime, you can take it with you. And if you're two people, you have 60 square meters, that should be enough. I'm quite a fan of that. Thank you.
It's a very, very interesting discussion anyway to, yeah, if that would be possible at all, because living space is a very emotional topic for most people, I guess. But yeah, thank you. Thank you also for the question. All right, so it's 5:10. Maybe we can take 3 or 4 more minutes because Tilmann, I think we have 2 more questions. Do I see that right?
I have maybe different counting. I have one last question. What would lead very elegantly to the next web seminar? Actually, it's because it's about Gypsum, and we're going to talk about Gypsum next time. But maybe because it addresses Netherlands and UK, we can make it here. So the question is from Ms. Smuda again of the German Federal Ministry of the Environment. And question, how do the Netherlands and the UK deal with asbestos in gypsum? So yeah, maybe very briefly, very quickly.
Yeah, 2 sentences. Thanks.
Yeah, so in the UK, the manufacturers have very strict specifications which they work with the recyclers to make sure that the product that's brought back into their process meets all their sort of quality criteria. And then obviously we have the Environment Agency in the UK, which is our environmental regulator. So a lot of gypsum waste does get put on land in the UK. It's used as soil conditioner. Some of that may be a bit of an abuse of the system, but there are sort of there should be some checks in place for that.
Thank you.
So yeah, in the Netherlands, asbestum, this is what you call it in English, right? That's there are very strict rules on how to work with that. You have to take it off the buildings within the next few years. Everything has to be clean. At the same time, when it comes to gypsum, it's a very sensitive topic. Like I said before, they try to save the building industry quite a bit to prevent too much difficulties in doing what they already do. So you are allowed to sorry, at the end of the life stage of gypsum products, it's you are allowed to just see as landfill. It's an inert material, so it shouldn't do any damage. At the same time, I think this is something we should look more careful to. But at the moment, as far as I know, there is no specific way, careful way of dealing with this in the Netherlands.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. All right. So, okay, we actually did find one last question. And it's again directed at the Netherlands and the UK, and maybe we can do this real quick so we can all go meet our families or go to our next appointments or whatever this day still has in store for us. But there is one more question, and it's how do the Netherlands and United Kingdom ensure not to bring back hazardous components in the circular economy?
I think that's a very difficult question, which I have
finish off.
kind of. Like for an example, the PVC window frames was one of the topics mentioned before. I think in the Netherlands, we're still really working on this. I think quite some things are like literally, figuratively put in the ground. Don't mention it, don't talk about it. I think this is a very, very important thing to look at from this moment on, especially when you look at the circular economy. I think this is a very important topic to have a very strict way of working with these kind of materials or substances.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe a quick comment from Ms. Adams.
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree with Sissy there. It is a really complicated area. I guess in the UK, it depends on sort of the hazardous material and where it's been used. So in some instances, we're a bit better than others. So for instance, our regulator works a lot with industry. So asbestos is pretty well covered. Treated timber and the chemicals used in that, there's protocols for that as well. I think where it gets less, that there's less attention, though there needs to be more, is in the whole sort of POP area, persistent organic pollutants, isn't it, and the BCPs and all that. And I think, yeah, I don't think that's really been looked at in any great detail from a construction perspective yet. Much more on sort of the household items. I think it will start, but yeah, as Sissy said, I think it's kind of been brushed away slightly.
Yeah.
Slightly, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you. So we're not hiding from critical questions. Yeah, thank you very much also for, again, to everyone, to the speakers and the participants alike, for taking more time than scheduled for this very, very interesting discussion. Just one more note towards the chat. Andrea Heil has just clarified that she's not, her idea is not to move to the countryside and build new houses, but rather work with the empty houses that are there. That's just a side note. I don't want there to be any misunderstandings, and I can confirm that I'm from the countryside myself, and there are so many empty buildings. So that's actually a very good thought to leave this meeting today. So thank you everyone for being so active again, so interactive, and contributing your thoughts and best practices, and of course for your time. And with that, I wish you all a nice evening and hope to see you again next week.